Alright, hello. We're going to do chapter 10.3 and I'm going to split it into two parts. We're going to talk about part 1, in which all we're going to see for solutions is one solution. So we'll have a variable, whatever it may be. Here we have x, maybe we have z or something. We'll just have whatever that variable is equal to some constant. We'll have a result. And these are the more common solutions we'll see in this course. They're very nice, so we hope for them. If we don't get them, we'll tackle them in part 2 with other types of solutions we have. For this one, we're going to solve 7x plus 9 equals 30. So the first thing you want to do is locate where your variable is. See the x. That's the side of the equation you're going to mess with. And once you figure that out, I usually like to circle my equal sign and draw a line so that if I mess with one side of the equation, I'll do the same thing to the other side. And our first step here is always to simplify if we're able to. Then we will do addition principle, as we learned in the previous first section actually. And finally, multiplication principle. Now, step 1 seems kind of silly for the most part for this particular question, but it will come in use for later on. We check if we can simplify both sides of the equation. Currently, we have 7x plus 9. They're not like terms, so we can't simplify any further there. Then we'll look at the other side. We got 30. Can't simplify much further there. So step 1 is pretty much done. We didn't have to do anything. Next step, addition principle. So once more, locate that x. Here's our x. Maybe I'll darken it a bit. And we want to get x by itself. So we want to see, alright, we have 7 times x plus 9. Well, we want to undo that plus 9. So the opposite of adding 9, we subtract 9. What we do to one side, we have to do to the other. Now we have 7x equals, and 30 minus 9 is 21. So after addition principle, because there is no more addition or subtraction going on, we'll head to multiplication principle. We have 7 times x. So we want to undo it. And the opposite of multiplying is dividing. And what we do to one side, we must do the same to the other side. So now we're left with x, because 7 divided by 7 is 1. 1 times anything is just x. And 21 divided by 7 is 3. And there's our one solution. So let's tackle another one, very, very similar to it, just displayed a little bit differently, in which, once more, we have an equation. There's two different sides. Step 1 for simplify isn't really necessary here because there's nothing to combine, no like terms. So we'll move on to addition principle. Now, don't get confused with addition principle. This is laid out a little bit differently than our previous one. Here we have 6 plus 8x. Always look at the sign in front of the term. So in front of the 6 is a plus sign. That's what we want to undo. We want to subtract 6. That way it leaves the side of the x. And you can always double check yourself. Okay, we have 6 and then we subtract 6. Nothing's left. We have 0. They cancel each other out and we're just left with 8x. But whatever you do to one side, you better make sure you do to the other. Now, negative 90 minus 6, they're both negative, so you add them. So you have negative 96. After addition principle is done, now you move on to multiplication principle. You have 8 times x. You want to get x by itself, so you do the opposite. You divide both sides by 8. And now you're left with x by itself equals, and there's no shame if you can't do the long division. You can always go off to the side and do 8 into 96. Let's see, 8 times 1 is the closest you'll get. Subtract, you got 1, bring down the 6. 8 times 2 is 16, no remainder, so you have 12. And just don't forget your signs. You have a negative, divide by a positive. So our answer should be negative 12. So x equals negative 12. You can write it this way, or you could write it as x equals negative 12. Either or works. Most preferred way to write it is x equals. Alright, let's go ahead and try one with fractions. So, once more, just identify your two sides of the equation. There's only one variable. There's not much we can do for simplifying sake. So we'll dive into addition principle. We have a minus 5. So to do the opposite, we add 5. And what we do to one side, we must do to the other. So now we have 2/5 t equals 6. And just remember, back to multiplication principle, this is 2/5 times t. And whatever we do to one side, we want to undo it, so we're divide by 2/5. We must do the same to the other. So this just requires us to be comfortable with fractions, dividing by fractions more specifically. So let's look at this. We have a numerator, 6, divided by a denominator of 2/5. Whenever we divide by a fraction, we keep, we change, and we flip. If it helps you, write 6 over 1 and go ahead and reduce. 2 goes into itself once and into 6 3 times. 3 times 5 is 15, so t must equal 15. We'll go ahead and continue. Now, this one here is going to require us to use that step 1 in which we are going to simplify. The reasoning for that is because we actually have like terms. Now, it's very important for you to identify your equation, because you want to simplify both sides separately. So look at only the left-hand side. We have 8x plus 7x. We can combine them. They're like terms. So we end up with 15x. Oh, let me put that somewhere else. I don't like the way it looked. So we have 15x and equal to 60 we can't do much with. But there we go. We simplified. After we simplify, then we do addition principle. Well, there's no adding or subtracting going on, so that step is done. Last step, we'll multiply. So we have 15 times x. To undo that, we divide both sides by 15. What we do to one side, we must do to the other. And we are left with x equals, and you could always guess if you don't know. I believe the answer is 4. Actually, I do know it's 4. I shouldn't say believe. Okay. Next. Same idea. Identify your equation. Now, the only thing that's different here is that x is on two different sides of the equation. So we're not combining like terms. You can go back to this previous one. Notice they're on the same side, so we just combine them. If they're on different sides, we have to move. And generally I follow the rules of gravity. Smaller one to bigger one. 2 is smaller, so I'll move it to the bigger. And 9x minus 2x is 7x. Still have that minus 42. Equals. And 2x minus 2x is 0. I wanted it to cancel out. There's no x's left on this side. That's why I did not divide by 2, because that would leave an x there, and that's not what I want. I want to move all of it to the other side. Now, after we've simplified where we got a variable, one variable on one side, we'll go ahead and do addition principle. And after that, we have 7 times x equals 42. So we'll do multiplication principle. Instead of multiplying the 7, we will undo it by dividing. What we do to one side, we'll do to the other. And we're left with x equals 6. Very pleasant answer. Let's see another one. It's a little bit different. We have an equation. There's our two sides. Try to always identify that. Then look, you have a y on one side and a y on the other. So we're going to have to move our variable to get it on one side. This is part of the simplify stage. So I usually move the smaller one. This is technically 1y, and that's 6y. So 1 is smaller. So I'll subtract y from both sides. Now we have 5y minus 4 equals 21. Still have to solve for y. Haven't gotten it by itself. So next up is the addition principle. And after the addition principle, we have the multiplication principle. So we'll go ahead. We got 5y equals 25. And you probably already beat me to the answer. We have 5 times y. So to undo it, we divide both sides by 5. And we are left with y equals 5. Very pleasant. Alright, so we got a couple more I want to make sure we go through to get practice. If you need to rewatch some of them, just scroll back. There's no harm in that. This one looks scary, but just identify your equal sign, just like we've been doing. Simplify both sides separately. And this is usually where students get confused. They want to undo stuff to combine them. And what you pretty much want to do, and I'm going to try something real quick. Let's see. I'm going to blank out half of the side. I don't even want to look at it. It's completely gone. All I'm going to do is look at one side of the equation and combine like terms. We're not moving anything, so we just combine like terms. We have 5y plus 1y, and that gives us 6y. We have negative 2 plus 33, which gives us 31. So that's one side, and we can't simplify it any further. So now let's worry about that other side. This isn't going to work. Can I just get rid of that? And it's gone. Magic. So now we'll ignore this side. Oh no. We'll ignore that side, and now we'll go to the other side. So let's combine like terms. We have 7y minus 4y. That gives us a nice 3y. And we still have plus 40. Now, after you simplified both sides, that is now the time to start moving one variable to one side of the equation. So we have 6y on the left-hand side and 3y on the other. We've been moving the smaller to the bigger. So now, because we're crossing the equal sign, that's why we're undoing it, so to speak. We're moving it over. So we have 6y minus 3y is 3y plus 31 equals 40. And after all that simplified stage, we're now back to addition principle. So we'll subtract the 31 from both sides. And we have 3y equals 9. Multiplication principle, we have 3 times y. To undo it, we divide both sides by 3. And we are left with y equals 3 as our final answer. Alright, let's get a little bit more scary. Let's throw some parentheses into the mix. Now, since parentheses are a little troublesome, we're just going to be in step 1 where we try to simplify as much as possible. So here's our equation. We'll simplify both sides separately. 4 is pretty nice, can't do much there. So on the left-hand side, we have a negative 2 in front of the parentheses. That means we have to distribute it to each term. So we have 6 minus 6x plus 10 equals 4. Now, still concentrate on your two sides of the equation. Simplify as much as possible. So we have 6 plus 10, which gives us 16. And we'll go ahead and get x by itself now, using addition principle and multiplication principle. Now be careful, there is the minus here, but we are going to have to make sure we look in front of the term, which is 16. His sign is positive, so to undo it, we'll subtract 16 from both sides. And 14 minus 16 is negative 12. And we still have negative 6x. Alright, so it's negative 6 times x. So to undo it, we divide both sides by negative 6. And now we are left with x equals positive 2. Because negative divided by a negative is a positive. And there's our final answer. Alright, last but not least, let's tackle one more where parentheses are on two sides of the equation It really doesn't change the difficulty of this. We're just going to distribute the 4 to each term. Same deal with the 6. We have 4x plus 16 equals 6x minus 12. And now we have our equation. So we have x on 2 different sides. We'll move the smaller one to the bigger one. And we're left with 16 equals 2x minus 12. Identify that equal sign. We have a minus 12, so we'll do the opposite. We'll add 12 to both sides. 16 plus 12 is 28 equals 2x. And then we'll divide both sides by 2. And we're left with x equals 14. And that is all.